Am I audible? Hello, everyone. Does anyone have any questions? Can raise their hand. We'll start the session now. All right. So we'll start the session now. First of all, greetings to all. I'm Ananya Nikita, and it gives me a great pleasure to welcome you all to today's webinar on how to improve the efficiency and effectiveness of the response writing process on behalf of APMP India. I welcome our prominent speaker, Mr. Aditya Sreedharan, Associate Director of Global Pre-Sales and Solutions Consulting at RFPIO. Today, Mr. Aditya will impart his knowledge on breaking down silos and fostering horizontal knowledge. He will assist us in better understanding on how to set expectations with our business associates and will walk us through various methods to constructing a sales stack that will increase productivity. So over to you, Aditya.
Hey, thanks, Ananya, for the introduction. Good morning, good evening for everyone joining from along the globe. Just to add to what Ananya mentioned and what you see on the screen, my experience also spans across products and services companies in a pre-sales capacity. So I have seen a fair amount of RFPs in my overall experience. And from my experience, one important learning for me was every company has a unique list of processes for responding to RFPs. And this depends on the type of products and service they offer. So it is kind of hard to define a boundary saying that these are the standard list of processes, these are the most efficient methods to follow. So henceforth, what I've tried to do is I've tried to keep it as generic as possible based on my own experience. So try to consume this content based on applicability. But I assure you that you will definitely have some key takeaways which you can put into daily practice. So without further delay, let's look into what we are going to cover today. The topic is mainly about improving efficiency and effectiveness in the RFP response process. So to begin with, we'll first look at what are the key traits that makes the proposal response effective. And post that, we'll look to unearth few key areas of inefficiencies that stops us from using the traits that makes a proposal response effective. Now, we can do this by looking at the organization's process maturity along with their growth. Here's a Q&A. See, you want, sir, I can stop sharing for a quick minute here. 1 second. Yeah, I don't think I can do anything about that. These are the content are in Google Slides. So the web browser is something that is going to show up when I do the presentation. Sorry about that.
No issues. We can consider.
Okay, all right. All right, you're able to see my screen now. Is it fine?
Yes, it is.
All right. All right. Resuming back to the slide. We'll first look at the traits that makes a proposal response effective, and then we'll look to unearth few key areas of inefficiencies that stops us from using the key traits that makes the proposal response process effective. Now, first, we'll do this by looking at the organization's response maturity along with their growth. And next, we'll look at presenting the state of operating models for the current RFP process across companies. And when we do this, we'll also look to break down the inefficiencies by looking at problem areas, approaching them with certain solution frameworks, and then list the positive outcomes it can yield. Lastly, we combine all the solution frameworks and present a future state model and discuss the transformative outcomes it can generate in making the RFX response process more effective and efficient. Now, let us look at the key traits present in the proposal response process. So broadly, multiple traits that makes a proposal response very effective. However, I feel these four areas are extremely critical, since if one of them takes a hit, the probability of winning the opportunity is significantly reduced. So what makes your proposal stick out? Because you're usually competing with multiple vendors for the customer's attention. And the first thing is to understand the intent, and the intent can encapsulate a lot of details such as the buyer's profile, the company firmographics, relationship with any incumbents, growth and problem areas, and also the seriousness of the buying process. So viewing the proposal from the reader's or the procurer's intent amplifies your probability of winning. The next area are core business outcomes, and there can be many outcomes from the list of services offered. But once the intent is discovered, one can clearly highlight specific achievable outcomes in relation to the key problem areas with milestones and possibly timelines. It can be short term, it can be mid-term, it can be long-term outcomes. But a one-line explanation of each outcome is one of the key items to be captured and added to the executive summary when you put your proposal. The third is the style of the presentation and the overall story of the proposal. The branding and colors capture the emotion gathered from the intent, and the main story captures the outcomes in a clean, simple language, making the overall proposal more simple and succinct. People nowadays have lower attention span than before, and it is important to be as crisp as possible without compromising on any of the key problem areas and the services which you offer. And the last bit is we are right now in a world where there are always multiple options for everything. So it is difficult for companies just to stick to one brand or one vendor. Loyalty is now touted as one of the things in the past. So one thing that guarantees stickiness is trust. This can only be established through genuinely presenting or establishing your credentials and also completely being transparent in multiple areas, such as commercials. The first three trades fall into a place. 50% of the trust is already established. Now you may ask that, hey, we do all this, but still we don't win enough RFPs. What is the reason? That's a fact question. The overall RFP to sale journey, there are multiple variables across the board. And there are some variables which we can definitely control, and there are some variables which we cannot control no matter what. So in this session, we are only going to look at the variables we can control. These trades require deeper research and thinking, and through the variables we control, we will see how we can optimize our process to maximize the use of the key traits I mentioned and increase the probability of winning. The first thing is unearthing inefficiencies, and this is done through analyzing a company's or an organization's process maturity and their current operating mode. Unsustainable growth is the birth of inefficiencies. The right analogy here would be you're compelled to fill up your house with more items, furniture, because you have moved to a bigger house with more wardrobe space. But have you planned or laid the groundwork to maintain those items? Have you thought that these things would happen when we want to move to a different house with not so much space? Because these items in most cases end up rotting and not being of much use. And the same thing can also happen with the RFP process in the companies. So now let us look at some key areas pertaining to an organization's maturity in the next slide. On this slide, we have captured the organization's maturity by employee size on the y-axis and the response process complexity by the ratio of man-hours to win rates on the x-axis. Now, when you start with the one in the middle, too small a company is not much known to the market. They start seeing RFPs only after a certain stage of growth. As seen in the curved graph here, companies start to realize that they need some processes to work around RFPs. And these are companies which might not realize that they need a process at this point. And they struggle even more, as shown in the last box on the edge right-hand side. The companies that establish some groundwork for working through RFPs, they see some amount of optimum growth till they reach an inflection point. And this point can vary across different organizations, however large they are. And this kind of fits the large house analogy perfectly. As seen in the next orange curve on the screen, companies don't continue the same optimum growth. And I'll explain the reason for this. Looking at this, we need to realize that we create processes to support people and we hire more people to facilitate the changing process. And this kind of becomes a never-ending cyclical loop. Every company evolves into a mature RFP process depending on the type of services, products they offer, and the verticals they cater to. This makes their process extremely unique. However, the maturity of a company's RFP process has a strong link to the size of the organization. So the magnitude of repetitive tactical activities will vary according to the size and the dollar value of the proposal, the complexity in the deliverable, and this may range from the customer's company to specific verticals. The number of people who are involved on the proposal process, their hierarchy, and the total time available for the deliverable. And all of this blows up after that inflection point when the company holds a prominent place in the market. It takes a lot of change management and effort to move a company's process to the extreme left, but this is possible. When you see this green curve, to do this, companies need to segregate certain activities from the rest. For this purpose, every bid team should track the delays and time wasted due to dependencies, the time spent on redundant work due to any misalignment, lack of proper collaboration, communication, time spent on discovering and using standardized content, time spent on formatting grammar revisions and formatting documents, time spent on navigating between disjoint set of tools and multiple windows. However, if you feel that you're already at the inflection point, you can still continue that optimum growth and yield a better result. And this can be seen from this last gray curve which you see. Now let's look at uncovering these broad areas that help you grow optimally and sustainably. To summarize the RFX work in one line, it is large volumes of work involving a lot of people to be delivered in the shortest possible time. Across the different stages, starting with the decision to bid on the RFX to the submission stage, there are multiple silos and independent processes that operate. However, there are four major areas that emerge where there is maximum scope for optimization. Well, these are critical to deliver a successful RFP, RFX. In most cases, the inefficiencies arise because they don't work cohesively in an agile manner. The four areas are repetitive tasks in the bid process, ranging from notifying the teams to take on a new bid, to creating a scoring sheet, to qualifying the bid, sending reminders, organizing meetings, finding the right teams, and formatting and structuring documents. Hence, the range of repetitive work across the board is endless. On top of this, you also have content silos, and this is a result of siloed functions and disjoint teams and disjoint toolset, which we'll see in a couple of minutes. But the content and the data is something that is omnipresent. Everybody understands content and data is the new oil. However, there is usually significant time being spent on finding and using the right content, and even more time spent on keeping the content up to date. A lot of this is caused by people involved, since working on RFX is never a one-person job. You need contribution from a large set of people with varying degree of contributions, with varying degree of expertise. The variations lead to multiple perspectives when you have conversations, and it becomes a very hard thing to bring all the people on the same page. The resultant is having more calls, more discussions, multiple clarifications, and difficult handovers. Given these different stages, the different set of people, and the timeline of the RFX itself, teams find ways to be efficient. They use multiple tools, task management, collaboration, editors, grammar tools, and email. But the problem is, again, information and content and people will get disjoint with multiple tools in place. While it is definitely important to use tools, companies should earmark areas that require complete alignment and have a unified tool in place for that. Some of the main reasons for these situations usually to stem from are not doing the basic groundwork of what is already available, and also not identifying the right people to be involved at the right set of stages, and also not iteratively working on items and keeping it or pushing it till the very end. A lot of these activities can suck the creative juices out of managers and responders, limiting their abilities to turn around a whole RFP in a short period of time. Let us further drill down into these four areas and analyze the problems and look at the possible solutions and the possible outcomes that can result into. Kindly follow the color code of task, content, people, and tools to capture this better, because when I cover these four broad areas and we go into this a little bit in detail, you'll be able to understand some of the problem statements much better. Identifying and eliminating repetitive non-value adding tasks, the task framework. To create something like this, every task should be analyzed and looked at from three lenses. First, we need to classify a few KPIs from your overall bid process, such as faster time to respond, high quality responses, team bandwidth and motivation, no delivery slippages, etc. Next, we need to look at each task and see whether it can be tied to the KPIs or not. List of the tasks that does not tie back to the KPIs. Now, from these tasks, scope out the ones that can truly be automated, changed, or removed. Based on this viewpoint, I have identified a few areas of change, and let us cover that. Unfortunately, we easily get attached to the process of responding than the actual response itself. So we are more resistant to change since these things have worked for us in the past by following these processes, but right now it doesn't work for some reason. Owing to last minute changes, the reviews, alignment, approvals are inevitable and forcing you to slog for multiple hours and even sometimes burning and eating into your weekends. The ideal way to be efficient is to have an element of flexibility in the standard process and tweak the process to facilitate the team's creativity for every bid. To make this work, we first need to separate out activities that hampers the team's creativity. Let's see how to do this. Firstly, along with the RFP stages, we usually tend to create a lot of checklists, planners, sheets, and trackers. One must first analyze whether we actually need so many items apart from the list of documents we already have to deliver. It is broadly also a mindset problem, as I said earlier. Companies or teams are more resistant to change because they're doing things in a certain ways and that might have worked in the past. They may say a checklist guarantees that there are no delivery slippages. Sure, but if slippages happen even after having a checklist, one should introspect whether having a checklist is the right solution or not, and also analyze even if they're looking at the root cause of the problem. Secondly, the intention of involving multiple people is to divide and conquer and work on the RFPs and complete it in a shorter time frame. There is very little analysis done on the topics itself and the contents of the RFP. So assignments are blindly done looking at certain keywords, and in most cases, delays occur because the organization is still looking for the right teams to assign this. There is usually no traceability to expertise or experience based on their past RFP works and the results which it has delivered. Thirdly, there are a lot of emails, Slack messages, MS Teams threads, Exchange, and most of them are just to check in and follow up and remind people. This is majorly coordination work and nothing else, right? So communication should mainly be used as a tool to empower, engage, and also make people accountable, and not just to delegate and follow up. Also, you definitely don't need separate people to manage RFP versions and revisions. Lastly, the unanimously agreed repetitive job by the whole RFX community is formatting, correcting grammar, spelling, etc. Well, this is very, very important. There are certain aspects that can be automated and let those teams focus on capturing the real emotion of the RFP in the design and layout. Now, let us look at models or frameworks that will help our case. I have kind of abbreviated the first letters of each aspect of this model to name the framework for better grasping and readability. And I've done this across the slides. All these aspects revolved around two central pivotal area, which is intelligence and workflow rules that kind of cuts across the other two areas. To gain sufficient output by kind of tackling the problem areas, we need to use intelligence on the past RFX, the current RFX data, along with certain configurable workflow rules that can do multiple actions, such as auto-generating checklist based on the size of the deliverables, creating scope sheet based on the size of the deliverables, triggering automated reminders and notifications, communication plans, and these can be done with or without a third-party tool. It can be created in-house too. So the Twin framework leads to the most ideal workflow where users can configure scoring parameters for an incoming RFX. Then they can use the scoring parameters and pass the data on the RFP wins. Then the users can decide whether to bid or not bid. When the RFX file is being worked upon, they can use the intelligence to create a scope or a delivery checklist automatically. The work task, the review assignment notifications can be auto-triggered and communicated to the respective SMEs. The responses can be revised through spell check and grammar tools automatically using any third-party tools, and then have the reminders auto-generated based on the deliverables and the milestones. And lastly, you can have a branding template or a preset template with branding and formatting guidelines. And this will kind of generate a fully formatted and ready to be shipped output for the buyer or customer. A lot of this is definitely possible, and you can imagine the time saving and the output it yields. So let us check out what outcome this type of model yields. As I said earlier, the end-to-end RFP response process for each company might be different, and it is kind of difficult to put an exact percentage or dollar value or man hours here. We also need to factor in qualitative and psychological factors of the response team, which is kind of very, very hard to quantify. To put it very simply, imagine a responder coming fresh out of business school, recruited to add strategic value to the proposal response process. And the first task they receive is correcting and revising the grammar in the document and formatting them. Their whole perception of the proposal process completely changes, and you can never get their creative best and make use of their full potential. On the same note, imagine their motivation when you say that we need your inputs on few transformative areas in this proposal, and start researching and think on few key areas which can change the nature of the proposal. The outlook is now completely different. And this can only be said if these repetitive tactical activities are automatically taken care of. So it is a common practice sometimes to dump some grunt work on new members, but having a different conversation in the long run will kind of yield significant results. These are hard to factor in and quantify, as I said earlier. So intentionally, I've not put any specific numbers for any of the slides, yet one can absolutely see value through the time saved through automating the checklist creation, the coordination work, reminders, task assignment, etc. The next is breaking the knowledge silos and self-enabling responders, the content framework. The importance of content is often misunderstood and only realized after it is too late. A company's scope of services only matures with the market needs, and therefore you often don't see too many changes too frequently. What this clearly indicates is that the possible list of problems in the market are broadly consistent with minor variations. And these variations again tie back to the key traits in the proposal. Therefore, a lot of consistent content is bound to get used across multiple RFX a company responds to. However, the initiative to store the content begins only after it is too late, and the initiative to start maintaining begins even later and then complicates a problem to a larger extent. Let us look at a few core areas of this persisting problem. Content is one area where, more than any form of automation, strong initiatives are required, and recurring initiatives are needed to keep things optimum, because content becomes the heart of everything one does in the RFP response management process. Firstly, since initiatives come in later and there is a sudden announcement from the organization to maybe consolidate the knowledge sources, during the initial phase of a company's response process, knowledge resides in multiple areas, multiple sources, and some are even saved and some are not even saved. One of the primary reasons for this is there is no full accountability on this type of work. Along the RFX process, there are multiple people with varying degree of contributions, but capturing good content for future use is usually nobody's responsibility, at least in the initial phase. Later on, when a company wants to consolidate the content sources, there's probably a designated knowledge owner, and consolidating content happens, but definitely it is not an easy task. It's a much more daunting task um, than it seems. This is because content can often exist in multiple forms, multiple formats, and can have varying dimensions. It can be responses in a document, it can be images, diagrams on a slide, it can be commercials on an Excel sheet, it can also be a PDF from which you can never copy or use the content. As your revenue growth increases, your scope of services, your client requirement would increase, and so will the range of documents, formats, and structures. When your scope of services increase, you create multiple exports too, and vice versa. So your content volume expands with the count of SMEs, and possibly the content gets more siloed and partitioned with the SMEs. It is natural for people to feel a little uncomfortable in terms of making their expertise public and maybe compromising the power they might have created internally with their knowledge. So there will always be some information which experts might want to retain. However, I'm not generalizing but this is definitely possible in certain organizations. Lastly, even after going through the mammoth work of consolidating all the content sources together, there is a recurrent initiative to keep the content up to date and tweak it to the changing process. It is not just updating outdated, irrelevant records. It is also allowing content metadata changes happen regularly with the changing RFP process and needs. These changes would only ensure that the response team gains maximum benefit out of huge volumes of content, and without the metadata attributes, it'll again be finding a needle in a haystack. Let us explore a practical framework model to address these four problems. This is kind of abbreviated from last to first to make it more consumable, but let us start with the single source of truth. Something that is your single source of truth should host all your content, your knowledge base, your product release nodes, and should also include any of the content formats, text, images, labels, field types such as standard complaint responses, dropdowns, etc. The main idea of a single source of truth is to ensure dependencies and coordination between experts are reduced on repetitive standardized areas. More than that, a single source of truth will ensure responders get self-enabled through the knowledge base and allows the scope to expand their horizontal cross-functional knowledge. This will influence or shape their responses equipped with more broader knowledge areas. For the single source of truth to function with a great degree of performance in terms of allowing for quick searches, enabling teams with faster response on topics, the content should be indexed across. This makes any content easily discoverable and usable. Content should also possess reusable fillables, such as information that requires personalization, information that is dynamic, and information that keeps changing, such as client name, the team function name, number of employees. So this is to make sure that the content is made reusable at all levels. On top of that, good consistent content requires regular maintenance. Identify content that are frequently requested by the clients and divide them into information that is dynamic and information that is static. Then allow configurable workflows in your content system to schedule reviews for the dynamic content and have automated triggers to remind the knowledge owners to maintain them. Lastly, growing the knowledge base with the initial base for the content being set up and having the workflows for reviewing them defined, teams need to take the recurrent initiative to grow the knowledge base by having a workflow where individual responders can add new content, new templates, and metadata to the knowledge base on the fly when they're responding to RFPs. As we discussed earlier, your scope of services also expands based on the topics asked in the RFP. So any new response, any new template constructed should have a workflow to automatically be pushed into your library for any future reference. With this framework, the most ideal workflow would be an RFP team getting a new RFP, and the system is able to preempt or recommend responses automatically on the questions or topics being asked. Not just one, but multiple responses based on the topics or the problem statement in the question, where users can pick those responses, use the response, make edits, and then save the updated record back to your content repository for future use. This gives speed and a great head start to the proposal responders. So what outcome this type of a framework can actually yield? Now imagine the feeling and motivation of different teams when there is a huge list of commonly asked questions in the RFP and there's not a lot of time to complete. Every responder Every responder can use the answer from the single source of truth, which is the knowledge repository, and the whole team can visualize the fast progress of the RFP filling up, and everybody's motivated to contribute and finish the RFPs even faster than expected. This can possibly turn around your success rate since the first bidder with the highest response quality sets the benchmark, which is almost tough and impossible to beat. On both sides, as a responder and as a SME, there will be significant change on the team dynamics as a responder does not irritate the SME or the SME with the same question again and again. The first time the SME responds to the content, it can be pushed to the repository. Also, the SME can really focus on responding to new interesting topics, which is a great use of their time, and contribute to expanding the scope of services through few new topics. This also helps in growing the knowledge base. There are definitely visible benefits to respond quality, team dynamics, and the overall time saved by using a consolidated single source of truth. The third one is having the people framework, which is enhancing visibility and collaboration across teams. Task and content does not function without people. We saw that task and content without people being on the same page will again lead to delivery slippages, poor quality responses, or lost opportunities. Companies that crack the people framework are the ones to break into content and bid task frameworks much faster. The biggest challenge with the RFP response process is that even for small deals that has a wide scope of services, you will need multiple people to come together. Communications, the discussions, meetings might happen on various channels at various levels, with at least few items lost in translation. This will result into more problems because the left hand does not know what the right hand is doing. There's simply no coordination. Let us dig into these problems areas with a little bit more broader depth. Organizations have a long list of hierarchies, and the hierarchies are created as a result of the company's maturity and growth. RFP process is also not an exception. The involvement of many people results in communication to be sent at multiple levels with varying expectations to get the job done. Hierarchy is not a deterrent to the response process, but without a unified framework, there's a lot of overall struggle. Firstly, with more people with multiple hierarchies should have different level of visibility across the different stages of the RFP process. There are teams who will need to just focus on certain items and members who will need to be informed on more larger areas. For example, individual contributors respond to certain part of topics in the RFP. The Center of Excellence teams contribute to their parts, but the proposal manager needs to know the progress of the whole RFP. With the teams with focused work and their managers not having full visibility, it results in incurrent communication and poor planning. And teams end up duplicating and kind of wasting efforts. Secondly, managers and executives need to consistently check on the progress of the RFPs and take quick decisions. Often the volume of work and the people involved, the managers and executives, don't visualize or get the full picture. They're always involved in stages when things escalate, that is when things have become messy enough or it is too late. The main reason is they can't track real-time progress and identify the gaps and take decisions on the fly. Without visibility and real-time progress, teams that do focus work also need to pass the information or part of their work to other teams, maybe in a sequential manner. Here, without proper alignment, some key information might get easily missed, irrespective of different teams doing focus work. If the other teams have not tracked the work they have already done, this can kind of continue seamlessly. Lastly, communication becomes an important tool here. There are formal generic communications via emails, there are nudges through communication channels. However, these communications reside in different places for different teams. If other teams and members want to get context on the expectations being set, they'd not be able to see the conversations that transpired, leaving them with partial information. These problems demand a more unified framework. Let us kind of dive deep into that. The UPI framework, which comprises of unified collaboration with a defined set of rules and permissions, which governs the visibility among people, it is also coupled with dashboards tailored to track progress, performance, and will open up visibility for the right set of players and keep it restricted for the focus players. The frameworks offers details contests for teams who would need it, and communications which can be traceable to align to expectations and have the key insights to plan efforts, allocate resources, and take decisions. A unified collaboration space would show conversations, expectations that were set, the files and information that were shared, and also show the people who are acting on those communications in real time. This will eliminate the chance for any redundant efforts happening between teams. However, a fully, completely transparent full picture is not often the best use of your resources time because it can often be a distraction. That is why we have roles and permissions that will govern the rules to allow more focus, optimum visibility, and faster response progress. Both these aspects combine with insights and reporting and dashboards covering the status of contributors, reviewers, and the time spent on certain questions. This will kind of put the overall critical path of the RFP progress and understand more real-time progress. These dashboards should also show the gaps that can be actionable, any milestones that has been missed, any duplicate responses that has been entered in the RFP process, and also show the members who are out of office. And this may include anything and everything that might cause delivery slippages for managers who might actually need to take immediate action. So executives should also be able to get a consolidated view of the project progress and also get a consolidated view of the win-loss ratio, the resources spent on RFPs, return on investment, the effort to reward ratio, which content has worked in what RFPs, and where to invest and plan for the future. All this might not guarantee a win, but it definitely guarantees that you don't miss deadlines and submit a bad proposal. The outcomes are definitely worth discussing. Let us look into them. Whenever an important detail is missing, SME is out of office or content missing, it triggers a panic button in your line of work. And peace of mind is uncompromisable when it comes to this line of work to be at your creative best. So the next time when you respond to an RFP, try to track the number of meetings, the number of discussions you had, the number of emails you exchanged, etc. And segregate how many of these meetings are just to bring alignment between teams. You have your KPI there. Having a unified collaboration will reduce the number of meetings and save you a good amount of time. Having customizable visibility will govern proper communications and expectations and will allow certain roles to focus without distraction and certain roles to exercise better decision making. Lastly, all these insights would give you that incremental value and learnings which you can invest into your future proposals. Putting all these elements together and leveraging response automation tool framework. Finally, you bring all these pieces together, the task, the content, and the people. We spoke about these three areas, and there is one thing that exasperates problems across these three areas, and that having multiple tools which are disjoint and do not talk to each other. They create more silos and gaps, and this kind of increases with more tools which you add to your ecosystem. Response automation is a framework which unifies all the different moving parts together in a centralized, overarching approach, yet keeping it more decentralized for certain specific areas governed through the permissions and role-specific controls. It gives companies the required hybrid approach and the flexibility to maintain more standardization, yet it creates enough flexibility to improve the response process at any point. Let us look into how this framework works. The response management framework rests on four fundamental pillars that offers better automation to make your response process more efficient and effective. You have an end-to-end project task management setup for all your RFX. This will include exclusive pages for your individual users with their core list of tasks they're responsible for, their calendars and reminders synced in. Added to this, it will store all your RFP files per project and have visibility into your team's bandwidth and expertise to divide and conquer. At the same time, it'll also have separate space for clarifications and seamless collaboration between teams. Their discussions, their track changes, their reviews, and all the information baked into one single area. With a single source of truth, the content repository baked into your RFP workflow, teams will be able to search, pick, and use the content and autofill standard responses, make edits, customize, and save new responses for the future use. All the teams, managers will have their mode in their RFP project to collaborate, track progress, track these gaps using reports, and take immediate action. Real-time collaboration adds visibility into the work done by other team members to avoid the duplication of efforts. Lastly, one of the biggest challenges is Many companies have already crossed the path before it is too late to bring task, content, and people framework. The main reason being they have disjoint set of tools with multiple teams working on it. Configurable integrations to your response management workflow, where all the applications talk to each other, will make the response process more seamless and more efficient. With a shift in using a framework like this brings a significant cumulative efficiency that is hard to ignore. Let us look at this in detail. Through the lens of this framework, you derive a hybrid approach which results in doing a lot more with very little time and repurposing resources time into things that matter, that is, revenue and customer experience. This framework is bound to make all your process scalable, consistent, more aligned, and overall balances the workload between different teams. A model like this could cause a transformative shift in the efficiency and the overall team dynamics. This will constantly motivate teams to do their best work. And once the response management framework is adopted, the change model in a company would look more agile. Let us look into how the agile model will look like. In comparison to the initial model, which is the current operating model for the RFP process, this is a more cohesive agile model that operates like an assembly line with a more iterative focus to churning out responses with quality, alignment, and creativity as a center focus. You'll have all the bit tasks, the pre-built content, and the people all on the same page, cohesively working in tandem, collaborating, searching, and using the built-in response with elements of automated workflows, triggers, data from other tools through integrations, and having the overall progress being tracked. It facilitates a lot of parallel work and iteratively improves versions of responses, bringing in more quality content, more collaboration, more automation activities at every single stage. This transformation will lead to very efficient response process, resulting in effective response quality overall. This will yield better win rates and garner the attention of organizations to the proposal function. Lastly, assuming that you have adopted a model like this, it will take some time till you start seeing results and getting optimum output. Some of the visible changes that are a result of this model are arranged from short-term, mid-term to long-term on this slide. First, your teams would want to do more with less, giving you better effort to reward ratio. Second, teams naturally spend the gain time to research, think, understand buyers better, and focus on more strategic elements in the proposal. Once they start doing quality work and gain some wins on their books, their overall work dynamics, motivation, and attitude will naturally change and will incrementally produce even better results. All of this combined with so many great things happening in the background, the organization and the management would want to invest more in this function, making the proposal function more strategic with a more powerful seat at the table. The whole nature of today's discussions brings me to my favorite quote. It is not always that we need to do more, but rather we need to focus on less. I think that sums up exactly what I wanted to cover today. And this was pretty apt for today's presentation. We have 10 to 15 minutes for questions. Feel free to ask questions. If I'm unable to cover all the questions, we can definitely discuss offline. These are my contact details here.
Thank you so much, Aditya, for sharing such a valuable information with us. We are open for question answer rounds now. Participants can
I think
raise
someone has
their
asked
hand.
for the recording, Ananya. We should be able to share the recording.
Yes, we'll be able to share the account and we'll do.
All right, if there are no questions, wait for another 1 or 2 minutes if anyone wants to ask. All right, and if there are no questions, then we can probably wrap it up. We can give you back 14 minutes. I think that was the point of today's presentation too, is to give you back time. And thank you so much, everybody, for your time. And to all the Indian audience, thank you and have a very happy Diwali.
Thank you all for joining in and being a part of this webinar and making it a success. You can provide us with your feedback. Have a joyous and safe Diwali. Thank you, Aditya.
Thank you very much, Ananya. Thank you, everybody. Have a great weekend. Bye-bye.